In the silence of an orphanage, two twins are unaware of the luxurious life they could have. When they discover the incredible resemblance to a millionaire, everything changes in an instant. But what appears to be good luck hides a betrayal from the past. The secret behind this similarity will turn your lives upside down in ways you never expected. Will people believe the twins? Get ready, because this story will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment on where you are watching from. The sky over the capital was covered in heavy clouds that March morning. Renan Nova was observing the city from his office on the 20th floor of one of the most imposing buildings on the main avenue. At 45 years old, he had achieved everything he had ever dreamed of. He owned one of the largest construction companies in the country, owned mansions, luxury cars, and was among the most influential businessmen in the country. However, something was missing, something that not all the money in the world could buy. "Mr. Nova, the meeting with investors is scheduled for 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Would you like me to prepare any additional materials?" asked Elena, his secretary, interrupting his thoughts. Renan turned slowly, adjusting his impeccably tailored suit. "That won't be necessary, Elena. Cancel the meeting. Tell him I had an urgent appointment." "But, sir, this is the third time we've postponed this meeting. The investors are—" "I said cancel it," Renan said, his tone brooking no argument. When he noticed Elena's expression, he softened his voice. "Please, I need to take care of a personal matter." Elena nodded and left the office. Renan looked out the window again. The decision he had made the night before weighed heavily on his shoulders. After so many years of dedicating himself exclusively to business, he had decided to look for his roots, to discover where he came from, who he really was. Renan was born in an orphanage on the outskirts of the capital, adopted at the age of 5 by a middle-class couple, Andrei and Mira Nova. He grew up surrounded by love, but he always carried with him the emptiness of not knowing his origins. His adoptive parents had died in an accident 15 years ago, and since then, he had taken refuge in work, building an empire, as if trying to prove something to someone he didn't even know. The letter he had received 3 days ago had changed everything. A simple handwritten letter addressed to him from a woman named Sister Clara. "Dear Mr. Nova, I hope this letter finds you well. My name is Clara. I am a nun and the director of La Santa Esperanza, the orphanage where you spent the first years of your life. We recently found old documents that may be of interest to you. These are not just papers, but a part of your history that has remained hidden for all these years. If you could visit us, we would be honored to share this information. Some discoveries only make sense when revealed in person. May God bless you. Sister Clara." Renan grabbed his car keys and left the office without telling anyone else. During the drive to the Santa Esperanza home, located in a simple neighborhood in the east side of the city, his thoughts wandered between the past and the present. What did that letter mean? What documents were those? And why now, after so many years? The GPS indicated that he had reached his destination. Renan parked his imported car in front of a simple building with yellowish walls and a small garden at the entrance. The iron gate, a little rusty, displayed a sign, La Santa Esperanza, Abrigo para Crianças. The place seemed smaller than he remembered, more humble, but well kept. When he rang the doorbell, Renan felt his heart race. A young woman of approximately 20 years answered the call. "Good morning, how can I help you? I came to talk to Sister Clara. She sent me a letter." "Ah, yes, she's waiting for you. Please come with me." Renan followed the young woman down the narrow hallway. As he walked, fragments of memories returned. The smell of home-cooked food, the sound of children playing, the feeling of belonging to something bigger even though it was so small. In a room at the end of the hallway, a white-haired lady with a gentle smile was waiting for him. "Mr. Nova, what a joy to welcome you. I am Sister Clara." Renan shook the nun's hand, feeling a strange familiarity. "Thank you for receiving me, sister. I confess that your letter intrigued me deeply." "I imagine so. Please have a seat. Would you like some coffee?" "No, thanks. I'd rather get straight to the point if you don't mind." Sister Clara nodded, her gaze revealing a mixture of excitement and caution. "Renan, can I call you that?" "Of course. Renan, 2 months ago we received a visit from a woman. She was very sick and knew she didn't have much time left. Her name was Hilda Meyer. The name meant nothing to Renan, but he felt a shiver run down his spine. Hilda came to us with a confession. 40 years ago she worked here as a helper. It was during this time that a young single mother gave birth to identical twins. Renan felt the air escape from his lungs. Twins? Yes, 2 boys. The mother, very young and unable to raise children, gave them into our care. Hilda told us that at the time there was a couple interested in adopting, but they only wanted 1 child. The director of the orphanage, against all the rules and without the knowledge of the biological mother, decided to separate the brothers. The revelation hit Renan like a blow. His voice came out broken. "Are you telling me I have a brother, a twin brother?" Sister Clara took his hands in hers, her eyes filled with compassion. "Yes, Renan, you have an identical brother. His name is Eric Fausto." The world around Renan seemed to spin. Eric Fausto. The name echoed in his mind. Eric Fausto, the real estate entrepreneur. Exactly. Just like you, he was adopted by a wealthy family. The Faustos raised him as an only child, without ever mentioning his origins. Renan stood up, unable to contain the agitation that took over his body. Why wait so long? Why didn't anyone tell us before? The former director forbade anyone from speaking about the matter. Hilda carried this secret for decades, afraid of the consequences. Only now, facing the end of her journey, has she found the courage to reveal the truth. Renan walked to the window, looking out at the courtyard where children were playing. Happily, his brother, an identical brother he had never known about, a man who, just like him, had built an empire, completely unaware of the bond that united them. Does he know? Has Eric been informed yet? Sister Clara shook her head. "We have been unable to contact you. Hilda left letters for both of us, but only you have responded to our call." Renan turned to the nun, a sudden determination shining in his eyes. "I need to find him. I need to see my brother." "I understand your urgency, Renan, but think carefully. This news could be equally shocking to him. Perhaps it would be better to prepare him somehow." Renan nodded slowly. His mind was already making plans, strategies, to get closer to Eric without causing an immediate shock. "Is there anything else I should know, Sister Clara, about our birth mother, for example?" The nun hesitated momentarily, as if measuring her words. Hilda mentioned that she was very young, almost a teenager. She came from a traditional family that did not accept pregnancy. Her name was Sophia Morgan. Renan repeated the name silently, trying to imagine the face of his biological mother, the woman who had brought them into the world and, for reasons he still didn't fully understand, had had to give them up. "Is she still alive?" Hilda didn't know how to say. The last time she heard from Sophia was right after you were born. She said she had promised to come back one day to get the children, but she never showed up. A heavy silence settled over the room. Renan felt as if he were living a dream or perhaps a nightmare. His entire history, everything he believed about himself, had been built on lies and half-truths. "There is one last thing," Sister Clara said, opening a drawer and taking out a yellowed envelope. "Hilda left this for you. It is your mother's letter, the one she wrote when she left you here." With trembling hands, Renan picked up the envelope. A part of him wanted to open it immediately, devour every word written by that unknown woman who had given him life. Another part feared what he might find. "Thank you, sister. I need time to process all of this." "I understand completely. We are here to help you with whatever you need." When he left the orphanage, Renan felt transformed. The man who had entered there less than an hour ago was no longer the same. His certainties had given way to questions, and his inner emptiness was now overflowing with contradictory emotions. In the car, before starting the engine, he opened the envelope. The letter, written in elegant handwriting, began with words that would forever be etched in his memory. "My beloved children. If you ever read this letter, know that leaving you was the hardest decision of my life." Eric Fausto watched the capital city from the terrace of his penthouse apartment. A glass of red wine rested in his hands as his eyes followed the lights that dotted the metropolis. At 45, he was one of the most respected entrepreneurs in the real estate sector, known as much for his luxury developments as for his discretion. He rarely gave interviews and avoided social events whenever possible. Mr. Fausto, your meeting with foreign investors is confirmed for tomorrow at 10 a.m. The voice of Sienna, his personal assistant for over a decade, interrupted his contemplation. Thank you, Sienna. Please prepare the final reports and make sure the contracts have been translated correctly. I've already taken care of everything. Oh, and this letter arrived. It seems personal. Eric took the envelope Sienna handed him, noticing the absence of a return address. Just his name handwritten in formal script. You may leave, and Sienna, don't call me anymore today. When he was alone, Eric carefully opened the envelope. Inside, he found a simple letter. Dear Mr. Faust, my name is Clara, the director of La Santa Esperanza. I am contacting you regarding a matter of an extremely personal nature that may significantly alter your understanding of your origins. Recently, information has come to light about your arrival at our orphanage 45 years ago, information that involves not only you, but another person as well. If you are interested in learning more about this matter, please visit us in person. There are issues that can only be properly addressed face to face. Respectfully, Sister Clara. Eric reread the letter several times, his brow furrowed in confusion and suspicion. He never spoke about his adoption. It was a closed chapter in his life, a closely guarded secret. His adoptive parents, André and Celine Faust, they had been clear from the beginning. He had been chosen, loved, raised as a legitimate son. He had never felt the need to look for his origins. Until now. The words in the letter caused him an inexplicable discomfort, as if they touched a wound he hadn't even known existed. Information that involves not only you, but someone else as well. What did that mean? Eric tucked the letter away in his desk drawer and tried to get back to reviewing the contracts for the next day's meeting. But his mind wandered, unable to focus. Memories of his privileged childhood came flooding back. The lavish Christmases, the summers in Europe, the education at the best schools. His adoptive parents had never skimped on the best of everything. The clock was almost midnight when Eric decided there was no point in trying to work any longer. He took a sleeping pill and went to bed, but sleep would not come. At 3 in the morning, he got up and returned to his office, taking the letter out of the drawer. Something about those simple words disturbed him deeply. The next morning, after going through the meeting with the foreign investors practically on autopilot, Eric called Sienna into his office. Cancel all afternoon appointments. Are you sure, Mr. Fausto? The meeting with the mayor. You can reschedule. Tell him I had a family emergency. Eric never used personal excuses to cancel professional commitments. Family always came second. In his life, especially after his adoptive parents passed away, leaving him the sole heir to a fortune built in the hotel business, a fortune he had multiplied by investing in real estate. The drive to Santa Esperanza home, located in a simple neighborhood on the east side, seemed endless. Eric had chosen to drive his own car, a discreet luxury sedan, instead of using a driver. He didn't want any witnesses for this visit. When he arrived at the orphanage, a strange sense of familiarity enveloped him. Although he had no conscious memories of the place, he had been adopted when he was only a few months old. Something about the yellow walls and the simple garden resonated somewhere deep within him. At the reception, a young attendant smiled when she saw him. Mr. Fausto, Sister Clara is waiting for you. Please come with me. Eric followed the young woman through the narrow hallways, watching the children playing in a common room. Some looked at him curiously, others seemed lost in their own worlds. How many of them dreamed of the day someone would take them to a new home just as he had? Upon entering the principal's office, Eric was greeted by an elderly lady whose gentle eyes emanated a quiet wisdom. Mr. Fausto, I'm glad you decided to come. I'm Sister Clara. Please have a seat. Eric shook the nun's hand and sat down, maintaining his formal posture. Your letter intrigued me, sister. I confess that I never thought of revisiting my past in this orphanage. Sister Clara nodded understandingly. I understand. Not everyone feels the need to seek out their origins, and that is perfectly natural. But there are circumstances in which the past finds us, whether we want it or not. Eric felt a chill. What kind of information do you have about me? Not just about you, Eric. The nun paused, as if choosing her next words carefully. About 2 months ago, we had a visit from a former employee of this orphanage, Hilda Meyer. She worked here at the time you were brought to our institution. Eric remained impassive, although his heart was racing. And what did this woman have to say? Hilda revealed that when you were left here, you weren't alone. You had a brother, an identical twin brother. The words fell like stones into the silence of the room. Eric felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. That's impossible, my parents would have told me. Your adoptive parents probably didn't know. According to Hilda, the director of the orphanage at the time, for reasons only he could explain, decided to separate the brothers. You went to one family and your brother to another. Neither family was informed about the existence of the other baby. Eric stood up abruptly, unable to remain seated. A whirlwind of conflicting emotions washed over him. Shock, disbelief, anger, and something deeper, a sense of loss for someone he had never met. And where is this supposed brother now, if he even exists? Sister Clara opened a drawer and took out a folder. His name is Renan Nova. Just like you, he was adopted by a wealthy family. He studied at the best schools, graduated in engineering, and today he owns one of the largest construction companies in the country. Renan Nova? From Nova Construções? The name was familiar to Eric. They had competed for some land in the past, although they had never met in person. Exactly. And he knows about me? Yes. Renan was here a week ago. He was as shocked as you are now. Eric tried to imagine this stranger, this competitor, as his twin brother. The idea seemed absurd, surreal. Do you have any proof of this? Any documents? Sister Clara nodded. Hilda left us copies of the original records which had been deliberately separated. We also have the letter your birth mother left when she placed you in our care. My mother? The word sounded strange on Eric's lips. Celine Fausto had always been his mother, the only one he had ever known and loved. Sophia Morgan. She was very young when she gave birth, just 17 years old. She came from a traditional family that did not accept the pregnancy. The father of the children, as far as we know, never knew that she was expecting twins. Eric sat down again, his legs suddenly weak. And where is that woman now, that Sophia? We don't know. Hilda lost contact with her soon after you were born. Sophia promised to come back one day to get the children, but she never showed up. Sister Clara held out a yellowed envelope. This is the letter she left for you. Hilda has kept it all these years, hoping that one day she could deliver it to its recipients. Eric picked up the envelope, looking at it as if it were an alien object. His hand shook slightly. Your brother has already read the letter, sister, Clara said softly. He expressed a desire to meet you. To meet me? Eric gave a dry, humorless laugh. For what? What does he expect? For us to hug and make up for 45 years of separation. I don't know what he expects, Eric, but I do know that truths like this have the power to transform lives. It's up to you to decide what to do with this information. Eric put the envelope in his inside jacket pocket without opening it. I need time to process all of this. I understand. Take as much time as you need. We are here if you need any further clarification. As Eric left the orphanage, he felt as if an invisible weight had been lifted from his shoulders. His carefully constructed and controlled world had just been turned upside down. A brother, an identical twin, a competitor in the real estate market. He drove aimlessly through the city for hours, unable to return to his apartment or office. Night was falling when he finally stopped the car at the observation deck. From there, he could see the entire city, lit up against the dark sky. Two parallel lives, two brothers who had never known each other, growing up in the same city, breathing the same air, building similar empires without ever crossing paths. Until now. Eric took the envelope from his pocket and, after a moment's hesitation, opened it. The letter, written in a delicate, youthful hand, began simply and devastatingly, "My beloved children." If you ever read this letter, know that leaving you was the hardest decision of my life. The rain fell relentlessly over the city that Thursday afternoon. Renan Nova watched the drops run down the window of his office, creating hypnotic patterns on the glass. 3 days had passed since his visit to Santa Esperanza home, and the revelation about his twin brother still reverberated in his mind like an endless echo. "Mr. Nova, I'm sorry to interrupt," Eleanor said, entering the room after a brief knock on the door. "I thought you might like to know. I just confirmed Mr. Eric Fausto's attendance at the Morning Star Foundation benefit on Saturday." Renan turned to look at her, surprised. "How did you—" He hadn't told anyone about his brother. "You asked me to monitor Eric Fausto's public agenda 2 days ago, remember? You said it was for marketing strategy purposes." Renan nodded, remembering the excuse he had made up to justify his sudden interest in his competitor. "Oh yes, thank you, Elena. Tell the marketing department to confirm my attendance as well, and prepare a significant donation to the foundation." When Elena left, Renan turned back to the window. The charity event would be the perfect opportunity for a seemingly casual encounter with Eric. Perhaps that way he could observe him closely, understand who this man who shared his blood was, before deciding whether to reveal the truth. Sachs on the other side of town, Eric Fausto reread Sophia's letter for the 10th time since he had received it. "My beloved children. If you ever read this letter, know that leaving you was the hardest decision of my life. I was only 17 when I found out I was expecting. My traditional and conservative family did not accept my pregnancy. Your father, a young student like me, never found out that they were going to be twins. When I told him I was pregnant, he disappeared from my life. My parents sent me to a nursing home far from the city, where I stayed until the birth. Their intention was for me to give the baby up for adoption and resume my life as if nothing had happened. But when I saw you two, so small and perfect, I knew I could never move on without looking back. I promised myself that I would come back for you as soon as I was able to settle down, get a job and a place for us to live. This separation would be temporary, just until I could offer you the life you deserve. If you are reading this, it is because I failed to keep my promise, and I apologize for that. I want you to know that wherever you are, I carry you in my heart every day. And my greatest wish is that even though you are separated from me, you could have found each other and shared the beautiful connection I saw between you from the first moment. With all my love, Sophia. Eric folded the letter carefully and put it away in his desk drawer. The last sentence kept echoing in his mind. My greatest wish is that you could have found each other. A wish that had never come true until now. He picked up his tablet and typed Renan Nova into the search engine. Dozens of results appeared. Articles about his work, interviews in business magazines, photos from charity events. In all of them, Eric saw his own face like a distorted reflection. The same green eyes, the same face shape. The only notable difference was their style. While Eric maintained a conservative appearance, with well-cut hair and sober suits, Renan seemed more laid back, with slightly longer hair and more modern clothes. The phone rang, interrupting his analysis. "Mr. Fausto, this is Sienna. Just confirming your presence at the Fundação Estrela da Manhã event on Saturday. Should I reserve a table for you?" Eric hesitated. He had completely forgotten about this appointment. "Yes, Sienna. Reserve a table and please prepare a generous donation on behalf of the company." "I've already arranged it, sir. By the way, I heard that Renan Nova will also be present. I thought you'd want to know, considering you have that project in the same neighborhood." Eric felt a chill run down his spine. Was it a coincidence? Or was Renan looking for the same casual encounter as he was? "Thanks for the information, Sienna." After hanging up, Eric remained motionless for long minutes. Fate seemed determined to bring them face to face. The ballroom at the Hotel Palacio was magnificently decorated for the Fundação Estrela da Manhã charity event. Crystal chandeliers reflected golden light onto the elegantly dressed guests, while waiters circulated with glasses of champagne and fancy canapés. Renan arrived promptly at 8 o'clock in the evening, wearing a navy blue suit that contrasted with his impeccable white shirt. He greeted acquaintances and exchanged a few words with politicians and businessmen, but his eyes constantly scanned the room, searching for the face that would be like his own. Across the room, Eric walked in half an hour later, opting for a dark grey suit. He too was discreetly observing the guests, his heart beating faster every time he spotted someone with dark hair and a similar height to himself. It was during the Foundation president's speech that their eyes finally met. Renan was close to the stage, sipping his glass of champagne, when he felt an inexplicable shiver run down his spine. He turned slowly, and it was then that he saw, about 10 meters away, a man whose face was the perfect mirror of his own. Time seemed to freeze. The applause at the end of the speech sounded distant, as if it came from another world. Renan felt his legs weaken slightly, but he stood firm, unable to look away from that familiar stranger. Eric stood there too, his expression a mixture of shock and fascination. For years he had stared at his reflection in the mirror, never imagining that somewhere in the same city there was someone who looked exactly like him, someone who shared not only his features, but his blood. Ladies and gentlemen, we now invite everyone to the cocktail reception in the adjacent room, where we will begin the charity auction, announced the presenter, breaking the momentary trance between the brothers. The guests began to move toward the other room, creating a human flow between Renan and Eric. When the path finally opened up again, Renan made an impulsive decision. He walked directly toward the man who was his brother. The approach did not go unnoticed by the other guests. Whispers and curious glances followed the two identical men who were now face to face, separated by only a few steps. Eric. Fausto? Renan asked, extending his hand, trying to keep his voice steady despite the emotion that overcame him. Eric hesitated for a moment before returning the greeting. Renan Nova. We already knew each other by reputation, but never personally. The words sounded formal, but the touch of his hands provoked a visceral sensation in both of them, like an electric current that confirmed what their eyes were already telling them. I believe we have much to talk about, Renan said, lowering his voice so that only Eric could hear him, but perhaps this is not the most appropriate place. Eric nodded, looking around and noticing the interest they aroused. I agree. We can go to the hotel terrace. It's more private. The two walked side by side towards the elevator, aware of the looks they were attracting, but determined to find a space for the conversation that would change their lives forever. The terrace of the Hotel Palacio offered a stunning view of the illuminated city. The night was clear, with a gentle breeze that brought relief after the heat of the day. Renan and Eric walked to the railing, both in silence, as if neither of them knew exactly where to begin. You've had a visit from Sister Clara, Eric finally said, not as a question but as a statement. Yes, a week ago. And the letter did. You read it? Every word, Renan replied, turning to face his brother. I never thought something like this could happen. My whole life, a crucial part of who I am, was missing, and I didn't even know it. Eric pulled away slightly, his green eyes reflecting the city lights. I'm still processing all of this. What was your life like, Renan? Your adoptive parents? Andre and Mira Nova. They were wonderful people, simple, honest, loving. My father worked as a bank manager. My mother was a university professor. They adopted me when I was 5 years old. Eric raised his eyebrows in surprise. 5 years? But Sister Clara said we were separated when we were babies. Renan nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. I stayed in the orphanage until I was 5. Apparently the couple who were supposed to adopt me backed out at the last minute. Didn't Sister Clara tell you that? No, Eric replied, feeling a wave of inexplicable guilt. He had been adopted by a wealthy family shortly after birth, growing up surrounded by privilege, while his brother had spent the first few years of his life in an orphanage. My adoptive parents, Andre and Celine Fausto, they took me home when I was just a few months old. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. two lives that should have been shared, but that followed radically different paths from the beginning. It's strange, Renan said, breaking the silence. Even though we grew up in such different environments, we ended up in the same line of business. You in real estate development, I in construction. They say there are things that run in the blood, Eric replied with a shy smile, the first since they met. Or maybe it's just coincidence. Do you believe in coincidences, Renan? After all this? Renan let out a deep sigh. I don't know what I believe anymore. Everything I thought about my life, about who I am, has been turned upside down. I know how you feel. It's like as if a crucial piece of the puzzle had finally been found, Renan added. Eric nodded, surprised by how his brother had captured exactly what he was feeling. What do you intend to do now? Asked Eric. About us, about this situation. Renan looked straight into his twin brother's eyes. I think we should get to know each other. Make up for lost time as much as possible. And maybe look for our birth mother. Sophia, Eric murmured, saying the name out loud for the first time. Do you think she's still alive? I don't know, but I'd like to find out. She would be in her early 60s now. Eric stepped away from the railing, walking a few steps across the terrace, as if he needed space to absorb all that information and emotions. I don't know if I'm ready for this, Renan. Everything is happening too fast. I understand. We can take it slow, one step at a time. The sound of footsteps interrupted the conversation. An elegant woman, approximately 40 years old, with brown hair tied in a sophisticated bun, appeared at the entrance to the terrace. Eric, they're looking for you downstairs for the... Oh, she stopped abruptly when she noticed. Renan, his eyes wide with surprise as he took in the two identical men. Sienna, this is a private conversation, Eric said, visibly uncomfortable by the interruption. Sorry, I didn't know. Sienna seemed unable to complete the sentence, her gaze jumping from Eric to Renan and back again. Don't worry, Renan interjected, extending his hand politely. Renan Nova, and you must be Eric's assistant. Sienna Voss, personal assistant for 12 years, she replied automatically, shaking Renan's hand as she continued to look at the two of them in astonishment. Sienna, please tell her I'm feeling unwell and need to leave, Eric instructed. I'll be back in the office tomorrow as normal. Yes, sir. She hesitated for a moment, clearly curious about what was going on, but Eric's steady gaze made it clear that there would be no explanations at this point. When Sienna left, Renan let out a short laugh. Well, it looks like our secret won't be a secret for long. Eric ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Renan recognized as one he himself did when he was nervous. This will generate a lot of speculation. Inevitable. Two businessmen in the same sector, competitors, who turn out to be twin brothers, separated at birth. It's the kind of story the press loves. We need to be prepared, control the narrative before it controls us. Renan watched his brother with renewed interest. The cool analyticalness with which Eric approached the situation was impressive, though not entirely surprising. Both men had built their careers on calculating risks and anticipating problems. I agree, but before we worry about the press, we need to decide how we're going to deal with this among ourselves. Eric stared at Renan for a long moment. Let's have dinner tomorrow night at my place, a controlled environment where we can talk without interruptions or prying eyes. Combined. They exchanged phone numbers and addresses, and when they said goodbye, there was a moment of hesitation. A handshake would be too formal for brothers, but a hug seemed premature for two men who had just met, despite their blood. Tazakure, they opted for a handshake, but even this brief contact carried an emotional weight that neither of them was prepared to fully face. Upon returning to the event, each by different paths to avoid being seen together again, Renan and Eric shared the same thought. Their lives would never be the same again. Eric Fausto's mansion, located in an exclusive gated community, was the perfect expression of its owner, elegant, imposing, and at the same time discreet. Renan parked his car in the circular driveway at 8 o'clock sharp, observing the contemporary facade with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. This was his brother's world, a universe parallel to his own, so close and at the same time, so distant. An elderly butler opened the door before Renan could even ring the bell. "Mr. Nova, good evening. Mr. Fausto is waiting for you in the living room. Please come with me." Renan followed the butler through the entrance hall, which was decorated with local contemporary art. He recognized pieces by Vic Muniz and Beatriz Milhazes. The house was spacious and sophisticated, but not ostentatious. Every piece of Einbisch furniture, every painting, every decorative object seemed to have been chosen with care, creating an environment that reflected refinement and good taste. Eric was standing by a large window that overlooked the sunlit garden. He was wearing dark dress pants and a light blue shirt, no tie, a more casual look than the crisp suit of the night before, but still elegant. "Renan, welcome to my home," Eric said, extending his hand. "It's an impressive residence," Renan replied, shaking his brother's hand. "It reflects your personality well." Eric raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And do you already know my personality?" "I'm starting to get to know you," Renan smiled. "Your home reveals a lot. Organized, elegant, without unnecessary excesses, but without skimping on the important details. Interesting analysis. Would you like a drink before dinner?" "A whiskey, if you have it." Eric poured 2 shots of an 18-year-old single malt, handing one of the glasses to Renan. "To our discovery," Renan toasted, raising his glass. Eric hesitated for a moment before accepting the toast. "To the truth, whatever it may be." They sat on opposite couches, separated by a dark wood and glass coffee table. The silence that followed wasn't exactly uncomfortable, but it was fraught with anticipation and unspoken questions. "I've looked into you," Eric said finally. "It's impressive what you've built from practically nothing." "Thank you." "But it wasn't exactly from scratch. My adoptive parents gave me a good education, solid values. Yet you've grown a small construction business into one of the largest contractors in the country in less than 2 decades. It's admirable." Renan took a sip of his whiskey, savoring the amber liquid. "I've been looking into you too. You inherited your adoptive father's hotel chain and turned it into a diversified real estate empire. Equally impressive." "We had the same blood after all," Eric commented, with a tight smile. "Maybe the entrepreneurial spirit is in the genes." "Speaking of genes," Renan placed his glass on the table, his expression becoming more serious. "Have you ever thought about taking a DNA test to officially confirm what seems obvious?" "I've already arranged it. The results will arrive in a week." "Efficient as always," smiled Renan. The butler appeared to announce that dinner was served. They proceeded to the dining room, where a rectangular table was elegantly set for 2. The meal, prepared by Eric's personal chef, consisted of sophisticated Mediterranean dishes. During dinner, the conversation flowed more easily. They talked about their businesses, ongoing projects, and industry challenges. They avoided, by tacit agreement, the subject that really united them, their shared past and the biological mother they had never met. It was only after dessert, when they returned to the living room with glasses of red wine, that Renan finally broached the topic. "I've thought long and hard about what we would do about our birth mother," he said, watching Eric's reaction carefully. "Do you have any objections to looking for her?" Eric took a long sip of his wine before answering. "I have conflicting feelings about this. On the one hand, there are questions only she can answer. On the other," he paused, choosing his words, "my parents, the ones who raised me, have always been enough for me. I've never felt the need to search for my biological origins." "Understand completely. My adoptive parents were wonderful too, but now that we know of each other's existence, aren't you curious about the woman who brought us into this world, about the circumstances that led her to give us up for adoption?" Eric stood up, walking over to a bookshelf where some framed photographs rested. He picked one up and handed it to Renan. "These are my parents, Andre and Celine. The photo was taken on my 10th birthday." Renan observed the image of an elegant couple next to a boy who was his childhood mirror image. The man, tall and, with a proud bearing, had an arm around the boy's shoulders, while the woman, delicate and with a gentle smile, held his hand. "They seem to have been admirable people," Renan commented, handing back the photograph. "They were. They dedicated their lives to me. Eric replaced the frame on the shelf before continuing. I'm afraid that searching for our birth mother will somehow dishonor their memory. I don't see it that way, Renan replied softly. Knowing our origins does not in any way diminish the love and gratitude we feel for our adoptive parents. It is simply completing the puzzle of our identity. Eric sat back down, his gaze lost in the darkness beyond the window. What if we don't like what we find? What if she abandoned us not out of necessity but out of indifference? It's a risk, Renan admitted, but you read her letter. It didn't sound like the writing of someone indifferent. Letters can lie. Words on paper are easy. True, but we'll never know if we don't try. A thoughtful silence fell over them. Eric seemed to struggle internally, weighing the pros and cons with the same analytical precision he applied to business. We'll proceed with caution, he said finally. First, we confirm the relationship with DNA testing. Then we hire a discreet, private investigator to locate Sophia Morgan if she's still alive. No direct contact until we know exactly what we're dealing with. Renan nodded, pleased with the methodical approach. I completely agree. Is there someone trustworthy who can conduct this investigation? Someone discreet? I do. Marco Thatcher, a former delegate, has been working exclusively for me for years. We can trust him. Great. What about the public? The press? I noticed. Some curious looks last night. Eric sighed. Inevitably, this will come to light. I suggest we control the narrative. An exclusive interview with a reputable outlet when we are ready. That makes sense, Renan agreed. What about our employees, our companies? For now, only what is strictly necessary. I informed Sienna this morning. She is my right hand. It would be impossible to hide something like that from her. And you? I told Elena, my secretary, and my CFO, Carlo. They are people I absolutely trust. Eric stood up again, walking to a stylish bar in a corner of the room, where he poured them both another shot of whiskey. There's another issue, he said, handing the cup to Renan. Our companies. We are direct competitors on several projects. I was thinking about that too, Renan admitted. I think we need to decide how to handle this professionally, independent of our newfound personal relationship. I agree, business is business, but maybe we can find areas for collaboration rather than constant competition. Eric thought about the proposal for a moment. It's an interesting possibility. Their construction expertise, combined with my development expertise, could create significant synergies. The conversation continued for hours, alternating between personal and professional topics. As the evening wore on, the initial formality was gradually replaced by a growing familiarity. It was as if, despite the 45 years of separation, something deep and instinctive connected them, a non-verbal language that transcended the lost time. It was already past midnight when Renan checked his watch. It's getting late. I have an important meeting early tomorrow. Eric agreed. Me too, but before you go, he hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words. There's something I need to show you. Renan watched curiously as Eric left the room, returning, moments later with a small carved wooden box. When I told Sienna about you, about us, she reminded me of something I had completely forgotten. Eric opened the box, revealing a small metal object. This was with me when I was adopted. My parents kept it and then gave it to me when I turned 18. Renan picked up the object. It was a small silver medal with the image of St. Christopher in relief on one side and an inscription on the other. To my little warriors, may you never lose your way back home. Renan read aloud, feeling a lump in his throat. Do you have anything like that? Eric asked, watching his brother's reaction closely. Renan shook his head negatively, a shadow of sadness crossing his gaze. No, nothing. When I was adopted at age 5, I didn't take anything from the orphanage other than the clothes I was wearing. That's weird, Eric muttered. If we were twins, why would I be the only one getting this? Maybe there were 2 medals originally, Renan suggested, and mine got lost during those 5 years at the orphanage. Or maybe... Eric hesitated, as if afraid to voice his thoughts. Maybe what? Maybe there was only one medal, and whoever separated us decided that it would go to the baby who was adopted first. A heavy silence fell over the room. The medal, a seemingly simple object, opened up a new dimension of questions about the past. May I? Renan reached out to the wooden box, examining it carefully. On the bottom, barely visible, was a small inscription. JM. Have you noticed these initials before? Eric took the box, surprised. No, I never paid attention. JM? It could be the name of the craftsman who made the box, or it could be someone related to our story, Eric added. John, Joseph, Julia, Mary, lots of possibilities. Renan returned the medal to Eric, who carefully put it away in the box. One more detail for our investigator to check, Renan said, standing up. We're piling up more questions than answers. That's how any successful investigation begins, Eric replied, following his brother to the door. Marco will start working on the case tomorrow. As soon as we have any concrete information, I'll be in touch. As they said goodbye, there was that moment of hesitation again. This time, however, it was Renan who took the initiative, extending his arms for a quick but meaningful hug. Thank you for the night, brother, he said, the word brother sounding simultaneously strange and natural on his lips. Eric, usually averse to physical displays of affection, returned the hug a little awkwardly but sincerely. See you soon, Renan. When Renan's car disappeared around the bend in the street, Eric stood for a few minutes at the door watching the night. A whirlwind of conflicting emotions overcame him, excitement at the discovery, fear of the unknown, and a strange sense of completeness that he had never experienced before. Back in the room, he picked up the box with the medal again, examining the mysterious initials he had never noticed before. J.M. Who could this person be? And what role had he played in separating the twins? Eric poured himself a final shot of whiskey and walked to the window. The city glowed in the distance, millions of lights dotting the darkness. Somewhere in that vast urban sea might lie the answers he and Renan sought, and the woman who had brought them into this world. A week had passed since dinner at Eric's house. The DNA test results came back, confirming what had already seemed obvious. Renan and Eric were, in fact, identical twin brothers, with a 99.9% genetic match. The scientific confirmation, although expected, brought a new dimension of reality to the situation. That Friday afternoon, the brothers met in the office of Marco Thatcher, a middle-aged man with features lined by years of police work. The place was discreet, located in an unostentatious office building. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming," Marco said, gesturing to the chairs in front of his simple wooden desk. "I have some preliminary information to share with you." Renan and Eric sat side by side, their expressions revealing a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. "Did you manage to find anything on Sophia Morgan?" Eric asked, getting straight to the point. Marco opened a folder on the table. Sophia Morgan, born on May 5, 1964 in the capital, daughter of Adrian Morgan, a textile businessman, and Hilda Morgan, a housewife, traditional Catholic family with roots in Portugal. He turned a page in the report. In 1979, at the age of 15, Sophia was sent to a boarding school in Europe, according to the family's official records. In reality, she went to a nursing home on the outskirts of the capital, where she remained until she gave birth in March 1980. "Where is she now?" Renan interrupted, leaning forward. Marco hesitated, his experienced eyes watching the two men carefully. "This is the tricky part. Sophia Morgan is officially no more." "What does that mean?" Eric frowned. He trailed off, reluctant to voice the darker possibility. "No, it's not what you think," Marco said quickly. "Sophia didn't die. At least, there's no record of her passing away. What happened was that about a year after you were born, she legally changed her name. She became someone else." Renan and Eric exchanged surprised looks. "What name did you change it to?" asked Renan. "Sophia Morgan became Hilda Souza. Apparently, after leaving you at the orphanage, she tried to start her life over from scratch with a new identity." "And were you able to locate this Hilda Souza?" Eric asked. Yes and no, Marco replied, adjusting his glasses. Hilda Souza lived in the capital until 1985, when she married an engineer, Carlo Mercer. After that, the couple moved to the coast where they had a daughter, Liana, in 1987. We have a half-sister, Renan murmured, taking in the information. In 1995, the couple separated. Carlo returned to the capital with his daughter, while Hilda remained on the coast for a few years. After that, I lost track of her until 2010, when she reappeared as the owner of a small inn. Is she still there? Eric asked, his voice betraying restrained emotion. Marco closed the folder. No, the inn was sold in 2018. The new owner didn't know where Hilda moved to. I'm following up on some leads, but for now, it's as if she's disappeared again. Eric stood up and walked to the window, trying to process the information. What about our half-sister? Liana. Liana Mercer, 38 years old, psychologist, married, 2 children, lives in a quiet city where she runs a private clinic. Does she know about us? Renan asked. I have no way of confirming that. But considering she was only 8 when her parents separated, it's unlikely that Sophia, or rather Hilda, would have shared this secret with such a young child. Renan also stood up, joining his brother near the window. What about the grandparents, Sophia's parents? Adrian Morgan passed away in 1998. Hilda Morgan is still alive, living in a luxury nursing home on the outskirts of the capital. She is 82 years old and, according to the information I have gathered, suffers from advanced Alzheimer's. A heavy silence fell over the room as the brothers digested the information. Their origins, which had remained hidden for so long, were now beginning to take on more defined contours, although still full of gaps and mysteries. What about the initials JM on the medal case? Eric asked, returning to his chair. Marco leafed through his documents. I'm still investigating. It could be the craftsman, as you suspected. But there is another possibility. In the orphanage records between 1979 and 1982, there was a nurse named Julia Moller. Do you think she could have any connection to our story? Renan asked. It's possible. I'm trying to track her down, but she'd be in her 70s by now if she's still alive. Eric checked his watch, an automatic gesture he made when he needed. Time to collect his thoughts. What do you suggest as the next step, Marco? I have 2 proposals. First, continue the search for Hilda following the leads we have. Second, perhaps it is time to consider contacting Liana Mercer. She might have information about her mother's whereabouts. Renan and Eric exchanged glances, a silent communication that was becoming more and more common between them. Approaching her directly could be quite a shock, Renan said. Imagine being contacted by 2 identical 45-year-old men claiming to be your brothers. I agree, Eric said. For now, let's focus on finding Hilda. If we don't succeed within a reasonable time, we'll reconsider approaching Liana. Marco nodded. As you wish. There's something else I found. He opened a drawer and took out a photograph. I got this from the local newspaper archives. It's a 1979 photo from a textile industry benefit. Renan picked up the photograph, feeling a tightness in his chest. In the center of the image, a young girl of about 15 years old smiled shyly. She had long dark hair and intense green eyes, the same eyes he and Eric saw every day in the mirror. Sophia, Eric murmured, peering over his brother's shoulder. Our mother. So young, Renan commented, almost a child herself. The photo was taken a few months before the pregnancy, Marco explained. From what I can gather, your father was a medical student, the son of family friends. The relationship was kept secret, and when Sophia became pregnant, the family treated it as a scandal that needed to be hidden at all costs. What about this student, our biological father? Eric asked. I'm still investigating. The name doesn't appear in any records, and the sources I consulted were unable to provide any information. But I have some leads to follow. After leaving Marco's office, Renan and Eric decided to walk to a nearby cafe. The day was sunny, with a gentle breeze that eased the typical heat of the capital. They sat at an outside table, ordering 2 espressos. It's a lot to process, Renan commented, watching the movement on the street. Yes, a week ago we were two strangers living separate lives. Now we discover we have a mother who has changed her identity, and a half-sister who probably doesn't even know we exist. Not to mention an as yet unidentified biological father, Renan added, and all of this shrouded in family secrets, shame, concealment. The waiter brought the coffees, and for a few moments the brothers sipped in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. "What do you think happened to the medal?" Renan asked finally. "Mine, I mean, if there were two originally." Eric thought, maybe it was lost during those 5 years you spent in the orphanage. Or maybe... He hesitated. Or maybe it was sold, Renan added, showing no resentment. The orphanage had limited resources. A silver medal could help buy medicine, food. Eric nodded, a fresh wave of guilt washing over him. While he was growing, up in a mansion with every opportunity possible, his twin brother lived in poor conditions in an orphanage. "It's not your fault, Eric," Renan said, as if reading his thoughts. "You were just a baby. You had no control over who would be adopted first. Still, the injustice of fate. Fate has brought us together now. Maybe this is the right time." A group of executives passed by on the sidewalk, some casting curious glances at the identical twins, chatting in the cafe. Ever since the charity event, rumors had been circulating in business circles about the uncanny resemblance between the two competitors. "Soon we won't be able to keep this a secret," Eric observed. "Maybe we shouldn't try," Renan replied. "Instead of letting them speculate and come up with wild theories, we could control the narrative, as you yourself suggested. You're right. I'll speak to my press office on Monday. We can prepare a joint statement and perhaps give an exclusive interview to a reputable outlet." Renan smiled, watching a family pass by, a young couple with a girl of about 6 years old between them, holding her parents' hands. "You know what's weird? I never got married. I never had kids. I always thought it was because I was so focused on my career, but now I wonder if there was something deeper. Like this? A feeling of incompleteness, perhaps, as if you were waiting to find something or someone before you could move on to other aspects of your life." Eric nodded slowly. "I completely understand. I was married once when I was 30. It only lasted 2 years. My ex-wife always said that I seemed to be looking for something that I didn't even know what it was. And now? Now I feel like I've finally found an important piece of the puzzle, but there are still others missing." They finished their coffees and walked back to where they had parked their cars. "What do you plan to do over the weekend?" Renan asked. "I have an appointment tomorrow morning, but I'm free after lunch." "Why?" "I was thinking, what if we went to La Santa Esperanza together? Maybe revisiting the place where it all began could bring new insights. Also, I would like to make a significant donation to help them." Eric considered the proposal for a moment. "That's a good idea. Can I meet you there around 3? "Perfect. See you tomorrow, then." They said goodbye with a more natural handshake than before, as if they were slowly getting used to each other's presence in their lives. The next day, when Renan arrived at the orphanage, he found Eric already waiting for him at the entrance. There was a visible tension in his brother, something he had not noticed in their previous meetings. "Did something happen?" Renan asked as they walked together to the door. "Marco called this morning. He got a solid lead on Hilda's whereabouts. Or Sophia, if you prefer. It seems she's living in a small town in the countryside." Renan felt a shiver run down his spine. "So we can actually find her?" "Apparently. Marco is going there personally to confirm before giving us the exact address." Before they could continue their conversation, they were greeted by Sister Clara, whose face lit up when she saw the two of them together. "Renan, Eric, what a joy to see you here. And together. Please come in." The nun led them to her room, the same, one where they had both received the life-changing news. It seemed smaller now, more welcoming, as if the initial shock had given way to a comforting familiarity. "I see you've met," Sister Clara smiled. "What has that experience been like?" "Surreal," Renan replied, "but somehow also natural. It's like finding a part of myself I didn't even know was lost." Eric nodded in agreement. We have come here today for two things, Sister Clara, Renan explained. First, we wish to make a donation to the orphanage. Second, we would like access to any records or files that may contain information about our arrival here. And also, Eric added, we wanted to know if you knew or have any information about a nurse named Julia Moller who worked here at the time. Sister Clara's smile disappeared, replaced by an expression of surprise. Julia Moller? Yes, I knew. Her. She was head nurse here for many years, but how did you know about her? We found his initials, JM, on a box that contained a medal left with me when I was adopted, Eric explained. A medal of St. Christopher, Sister Clara murmured, as if remembering. Yes, I remember it. Do you know anything about this medal? Why did only one of us receive it? Renan asked. Sister Clara looked uncomfortable, shifting restlessly in her chair. That was so long ago, and I was just a novice at the time. I didn't have access to all the information. Please, Sister Clara, Eric insisted. Any detail could be important to understanding our story. The nun sighed deeply before answering. There were two medals originally identical. Your mother, Sophia, left one for each baby. She personally delivered them to the director, along with the letter. Renan leaned forward, feeling his heart race. And what happened to mine? I don't know for sure, Sister Clara replied, avoiding her brother's eyes. But I remember hearing rumors that the former headmaster, Father Andre, had confiscated one of the medallions. He said it was inappropriate for orphans to have valuables, that it created an unfair distinction between the children. Confiscated or stolen? Eric asked, his voice hardening. The silence that followed Eric's question was heavy, laden with pent-up emotions. Sister Clara laced her fingers together on the table, her eyes revealing an inner conflict. I can't judge Father Andre's intentions, she said finally. He passed away over 10 years ago, but I know that after Eric was adopted, he expressed regret for separating the brothers. Perhaps the medal was his way of... She hesitated, searching for the right words. Of compensation, or perhaps just as a reminder. A memory of a crime, Renan muttered more to himself than to the others, separating twin brothers, destroying a bond that should be sacred. Eric watched his brother closely. It was the first time he had seen him truly shaken since they had met. The image of the successful, confident businessman had given way to a vulnerable man confronting the past that had been stolen from him. Sister Clara, Eric said, his voice softer now, we understand that you were only a novice at the time, but any additional information might help us complete this puzzle. For example, this nurse, Julia Moller. Is she still alive? Can we find her? The nun adjusted her habit, a nervous gesture that did not go unnoticed by the brothers. Julia retired about 15 years ago. As far as I know, she moved to Atibaya, where she had a small farm. We kept in touch for a few years, but then we lost touch. She must be in her 70s now. Do you have an address, a telephone number, any means of contact? Renan insisted. I can check the old records. Maybe we still have her address in Atibaya. We'd like that very much, Eric said. What about the records about our arrival at the orphanage? Is there any documentation? Sister Clara slowly stood up. We have some records in the basement. They're old admission forms, medical reports, adoption documents. I can check to see if yours still exist. Give me a few minutes. When the nun left the room, Eric turned to Renan. Are you well? Renan took a deep breath, trying to control the emotion that was taking over him. It's strange. I always knew I was adopted. I always understood that that was the reality of my life. But to find out that someone deliberately decided to separate me from my brother, that person made a decision that completely altered the course of our lives, and it's hard to accept. Eric nodded, equally thoughtful. Yes, it's like we were pieces in a game we didn't choose to play. And now, after 45 years, we are trying to understand the rules of this game and why we were chosen as participants. The door opened and Sister Clara returned, carrying a dusty cardboard box. I found some documents related to you, she said, placing the box on the table. And I also found Julia's address in Atibaya, although I can't guarantee that she's still there. Renan and Eric approached, eager to explore the contents of the box. There were yellowed folders, old hand-filled forms, and a few black and white photographs. "This is the admission form," Sister Clara explained, pulling out a form. It was filled out the day Sophia brought them in. Eric picked up the document, examining it carefully. The date, March 17, 1980, was written at the top, followed by basic information. Newborn twins, male, approximately 2 weeks old. Mother, Sophia Morgan, age 17, father, unknown. Unknown, Renan repeated. Did she really never reveal who he was? Not in the official records, Sister Clara replied, but there is a note here that might be of interest. She pointed to a small handwritten comment in the margin of the document. Mother mentions father is a medical student, family AL. AL? Eric asked. Are those the initials of the last name? Possibly, the nun agreed. It was common for us to make informal notes of what mothers told us, even when they chose not to include this information in the official records. Renan continued to examine the documents, while Eric flipped through some photographs. Look at this, Eric said, handing his brother a photo. The image showed 2 identical babies lying side by side in a simple crib. That's us. Renan took the photograph, feeling a lump in his throat. It was surreal to see himself next to his brother when they were both just newborns, before fate separated them. Can I have this picture? He asked Sister Clara. Of course, in fact, you can take copies of all these documents if you want. They are part of your history. Eric found another intriguing document, a visiting record, dated October 1980, 7 months after the twins arrived at the orphanage. Sophia was here, he said, surprised. After I left them, Sister Clara nodded. Yes, she visited a few times during the first year. Then when you were adopted, Eric, the visits became more rare, and when she changed her identity to Hilda, we lost contact completely. But did she? No, we had been separated, Renan asked. Did she know Eric had been adopted and I remained in the orphanage? The nun hesitated before answering. I believe so. She was here one last time when you were about 3 years old, Renan. I remember because I was already working directly with the children at that time. She spoke at length with Father Andre and left very shaken. She never came back. The brothers exchanged meaningful glances. The puzzle was gaining new pieces, although the complete picture still remained hazy. They continued to pore over the documents for another hour, absorbing every detail, every clue about their shared past. When they finally prepared to leave, Eric handed Sister Clara an envelope. Our donation to Santa Esperanza Home, he explained, is just the beginning. We intend to establish a permanent foundation to support your work. The nun opened the envelope and her eyes widened when she saw the amount on the check. That's very generous. I don't know how to thank you. It is not necessary, Renan replied. This place, after all, has been my home for 5 years, and it is here that our story began. As they left the orphanage, the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden light over the simple garden. The children were still playing in the courtyard, their laughter echoing in the afternoon air. Shall we get some coffee? Eric suggested. I need to digest all this. They headed to a nearby coffee shop, choosing a table far away for privacy. After ordering 2 espressos, Eric took his phone out of his pocket. Marco sent a message. He confirmed, Hilda Souza, our mother, is living in a small town called Silencia. She has a simple house, lives alone, and works as an art teacher at a local school. Renan felt his heart race. Does he have the exact address? Yes, what's more, he got a recent photo of her. Eric showed his brother the screen of his phone. In the image, a woman of about 62 years old smiled as she painted at an easel outdoors. Her hair, now grey, still had traces of the dark brown they had both seen in the photo of Sophia as a young girl, and her eyes, the same green eyes the brothers shared, gleamed with a serene vivacity. It's her, Renan murmured, feeling an emotion he couldn't name. Our mother. Marco suggests. We travel there next week. He can arrange a discreet meeting if we want. Renan handed the phone back, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Are we ready for this? To confront her after all these years? I don't know if anyone can ever really be ready for something like this, Eric replied, but I think we need to do it for ourselves. What about our stepsister, Liana? Should we contact her first? Eric considered the question for a moment. I think we need to understand the whole story from Hilda's perspective first. Then, depending on what we discover, we can decide how to approach Liana. They finished their coffees in silence, each lost in their own thoughts and emotions. The discovery that Sophia had visited the orphanage even after she had left them, that she had probably known about the twins' separation, added a new layer of complexity to the story. What do you want to ask her? Renan asked suddenly. If you could ask our birth mother just one question, what would it be? Eric thought deeply before answering. I would ask if she fought for us, if she tried to get us back, keep us together. What about you? I would ask her if she regretted it. Not leaving us, I understand the circumstances that forced her to do so, but not being able to come back for us, as she promised in the letter. The brothers left the coffee shop and walked to their cars parked side by side. I'll arrange our flight, Eric said. We can go on Wednesday if you're free. I'll be free, Renan assured. I'll rearrange my schedule. This is more important than any business meeting. When they said goodbye, there was no more hesitation. They exchanged a firm hug, as if sealing a silent pact to continue this journey together, regardless of what they found at the end. On Wednesday, at exactly 9:45 in the morning, Eric's private jet landed at the small airport in Joinville. Marco was waiting for them with a rental car, ready to take them to Solencia, about an hour away. During the journey, Renan observed the mountainous landscape, so different from the hustle and bustle of the capital. Small rural properties, green, fields, abundant vegetation. A peaceful scene that contrasted sharply with the emotional storm he felt inside. She works at the Municipal School of Arts until 4 p.m., Marco explained, breaking the silence. Afterwards, she usually walks home about 10 blocks from the school. She lives alone in a simple but well-kept house. She has few friends in the city and leads a reserved life. Does she know we're coming? Eric asked. No, I thought it best to wait for your guidance on how to proceed. Renan and Eric exchanged glances. They had discussed the best approach at length over the previous few days. We don't want to scare her, Renan said. To have two identical men she hasn't seen in more than 4 decades appear out of nowhere, it could be quite a shock. I agree, Eric nodded. Marco, I think you should make the first contact, explain who we are, ask if she would be willing to receive us. I understand. I can do that today while you wait at the hotel. Depending on her response, we can plan the next step. The car entered the small town of Solencia, passing through tree-lined streets and typical houses in the south of the country. Marco dropped them off at a discreet hotel in the city center and set off to carry out his mission. The next few hours were the longest of the brothers' lives. They remained in the hotel room, alternating between tense conversations and long periods of silence, each minute seeming to stretch on forever. Finally, at 5:30 p.m., Eric's phone rang. Marco, he said, answering immediately and putting it on speakerphone so Renan could hear. Gentlemen, I made contact, the investigator said, his neutral voice giving nothing away about the outcome of the conversation. I met Hilda as she was leaving school. I explained who I was and why I was there. And, Renan pressed, unable to contain his anxiety. There was a pause before Marco continued. She was very pale at first. She had to sit down. I thought she was going to faint. But then she pulled herself together and, well, she asked me to pass on a message to you. Eric closed his eyes, preparing himself for what was to come next. What message? She said, tell them I expect them at my house at 8 p.m. and tell them that no matter what they think of me, there hasn't been a single day in 45 years that I haven't thought of them. Hilda Souza's house was on a quiet street, away from the small center of Solencia. It was a simple 2-story building with a well-tended garden in front, where roses and hydrangeas bloomed in harmony. There was something welcoming about the facade, painted a soft shade of blue, with white curtains visible through the lighted windows. Renan and Eric remained for a few minutes inside the car, parked in front of the residence. Neither of them seemed capable of taking the next step. "It's funny," Renan murmured, breaking the silence. "We're men who make multi-million-dollar decisions without hesitation. But now we are about to confront the greatest mystery of our lives," Eric added, "and there are no spreadsheets or projections that can prepare us for it." The brothers exchanged glances, a silent communication that had become natural between them in just 2 weeks of living together. "Let's go," Eric said finally. "Whatever we find in there, at least we'll do it together." They walked side by side down the small stone path that led to the front door. Renan rang the doorbell, and the melodious sound echoed inside the house. Seconds later, soft footsteps approached and the door opened. Hilda Souza, formerly known as Sophia Morgan, was there, just as she had been in the photo Marco had shown her. Petite in stature, with grey hair pulled back in a simple bun, wearing a blue wool sweater and black pants. But it was her eyes that immediately caught the brothers' attention, those same green eyes they saw every day in the mirror, now framed by expression lines that told stories of decades of life. For a long moment, no one said anything. Hilda looked from one to the other, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her eyes filled with tears, but she maintained her composure. "Renan." "Eric," he finally said, his voice surprisingly steady. "Please come in." The living room was cozy, decorated with simplicity and good taste. Oil paintings of local landscapes decorated the walls, some signed by Hilda, revealing her artistic talent. There were also framed photographs, a young woman with a small girl, the same girl at different stages of her life, until she became a grown woman, sometimes accompanied by a man and 2 small children. "Liana," Hilda explained, noticing her brother's interest in the photographs. "My daughter, and my grandchildren Miguel and Sophia." "Sophia," Eric repeated. "Yes, my granddaughter has the same name I used to have," Hilda replied with a wistful smile. Liana chose the name, unaware of the connection. "I thought it appropriate." She invited them to sit on the sofa, while she took an armchair opposite. Her hands, the brothers noticed, trembled slightly as she adjusted her skirt, the only visible sign of her nervousness. "Would you like something to drink? Tea, coffee, water?" "We're fine, thanks," Renan replied, his voice softer than usual. An uncomfortable silence hung over the room. There were so many questions, so many emotions, that it seemed impossible to know where to begin. "You look so much alike," Hilda said finally, her gaze flicking between the two of them. "Just as I imagined you would. Strong resemblance to your father?" "Our biological father," Eric corrected automatically. Then, noticing the harshness in his voice, he softened his tone. "Sorry, it's just, we're still processing all of this." Hilda nodded understandingly. "I can only imagine how much resentment they must feel. They have every right to. I abandoned them when they needed me most." "We're not here to judge," Renan interjected. "We're here to understand, to fill in the gaps in our history." Hilda took a deep breath, as if gathering her courage. "Where would you like me to start?" "At the beginning," Eric suggested. "Who was our biological father?" Hilda closed her eyes briefly before answering. "His name was Andre Lopez. He was a medical student, the son of my parents' friends. We were 16 when we fell in love. It was a secret, intense romance, as only 16-year-olds can be." A nostalgic smile lit up her face for a moment. "When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. My parents were extremely traditional, strict. Andre, he wasn't much better. He panicked, said he wasn't ready to be a father, that it would ruin his future as a doctor." "Did he know we were twins?" "We were," Renan asked. "No. When I told him about the pregnancy, he just disappeared from my life. My parents sent me to a nursing home far from the city, with the official story being that I was studying abroad. I only found out they were twins during the birth." Hilda stood up and walked to a desk in the corner of the room. She opened a drawer and took out a yellowed envelope. "I kept some photographs from that time." She handed the envelope to her brothers. "You might want to see them." Eric opened the envelope and he and Renan looked through the old photographs. There were some of Sophia as a young, smiling woman at social events, others of her with a tall, dark-haired, intense-looking young man, André, and finally, 2 photos that took their breath away. Sophia, still a teenager, holding 2 newborn babies in her arms, looking at them with an expression of devastating love. "These are the only photographs I have of you," Hilda explained softly. "They were taken in the maternity ward before my parents forced me to give you up for adoption." "You didn't want to give us up?" Eric asked, his voice betraying restrained emotion. "Of course." "Dot?" The answer came with a vehemence that surprised the brothers. "You were my children. I loved you from the first moment. But I was a minor, completely dependent on my parents. I had no way to support them, no place to go. My father gave me an ultimatum. Either I gave the babies up for adoption and resumed my normal life, or I would be disinherited, thrown out of the house without a penny." "And then you left us at the orphanage," Renan concluded, no accusation in his voice. "Just stating a fact. Yes, it was the hardest day of my life." The tears Hilda had held back began to stream down her face. "But I promised myself that I would come back for you as soon as I could settle down, get a job, a place for us to live. That's why I left that letter. And the medals." The Saint. Christopher medals, Eric recalled. "I still have one of them to this day." Hilda wiped her tears with a handkerchief she took from her pocket. "When I learned you had been separated, that Eric had already been adopted." Her voice trailed off. "I visited the orphanage regularly that first year. When I found out you had been separated, I confronted Father André. He said it was best for everyone, that each of you would have a loving family. But I knew I had destroyed a sacred bond." "What about me?" Renan asked. "Why didn't you adopt me when you found out Eric was gone?" A sob escaped Hilda's lips. "I tried, Renan. I swear I tried. I started working as soon as I turned 18, saving every penny so I could offer him a decent home. When I finally had the means, I went back to the orphanage to get him. But what?" pressed Renan. "My father. He learned of my plans and used his influence to stop me. He threatened Father André, saying he would destroy the orphanage if he allowed me to adopt him. Then, to make sure I would never try again, he forced me to change my identity, to abandon the name Sophia and become Hilda." "Why?" Eric asked incredulously. "Why are you so intent on keeping us apart, on erasing your past?" "Image, social status. For my father, a family scandal was worse than anything. Having a daughter who got pregnant as a teenager was terrible enough. Seeing her raise an illegitimate child would be unthinkable, and Hilda paused as if measuring her next words. "He was a man who did not accept being contradicted. When challenged, he became ruthless." The brothers absorbed this information in silence. The picture that began to form was of a young mother struggling against forces much larger than herself: family, society, patriarchal authority. "And then?" Renan asked. "When you got married, you had Liana." "Those were difficult years. I married Carlo partly to escape my father's influence. He was a good man, although our marriage was never based on true love. We had Liana, and for a few years I tried to convince myself that I could be happy, that I could move on. But I never stopped thinking about you, wondering how you were, if you were okay, if we would ever meet again." "Why did you break up with Carlo?" Eric asked. "He deserved someone who loved him completely, and I could never get over the past. I could never stop looking for you in every child's face, then a teenager's, then a grown man's face that I saw on the street." Hilda sighed deeply. "When we separated, he took Liana to the capital. I stayed on the coast for a while, then moved to the countryside and finally here, looking for new beginnings, trying to find peace." "And found it?" Renan asked softly. "Peace? Not entirely. Acceptance, maybe. And gratitude for the small moments of joy, like watching Liana grow, meeting my grandchildren, teaching art to children." She hesitated before continuing. "But there was always an emptiness, a wound that never fully healed." Eric, who had maintained a more reserved posture until then, stood up and walked to the window, observing the peaceful night outside. "When you heard we had found each other, what did you think?" he asked without turning around. "I felt fear and hope in equal measure," Hilda replied honestly. "Fear of their judgment, of their righteous anger, and hope that perhaps they could find it in their hearts to understand, if not forgive." Eric slowly turned to face her. "I spent years building a perfect life abroad, avoiding deep connections, maintaining superficial relationships. Renan devoted himself obsessively to his work, never married, never had children. We both felt that something fundamental was missing, without ever understanding exactly what it was." "I'm sorry," Hilda murmured, her voice cracking with emotion. "If I could take it back—" "We can't go back," Renan interrupted, standing up as well. "None of us can change the past. But maybe we can build something from here." Fai. Meaningful silence hung over the room. Hilda looked at her sons, strong, successful, grown men, trying to see in them the babies she had briefly held in her arms 45 years earlier. "Does Liana know about us?" Eric finally asked. Hilda shook her head. "No. I was always afraid to tell her, afraid of how she would react, how it would affect her view of the mother she knew. But now perhaps it is time for the whole truth to come out," Renan added. "Yes, she deserves to know she has 2 brothers, and you deserve to know her." Eric slowly approached Hilda, his green eyes, so similar to hers, studying every detail of her face. "One last question," he said. "The St. Christopher Medal, what did it mean to you?" Hilda smiled through her tears. "St. Christopher, the protector of travelers. I wish that no matter what path life takes you down, you would always find your way back to each other, back to home." Renan also approached, and for a moment the 3 remained motionless, as if they had reached a precipice and were hesitating before the next jump. It was Hilda who took the first step. With a hesitant gesture, she held out her hands, one for each child. Eric and Renan looked at those small, aged hands, the hands that had briefly held theirs when they were newborns, and then, simultaneously, accepted them. There were no words for a long time, just the eloquent silence of 3 people who, after decades of separation, were finally finding their way back to each other. 3 months later, Eric's mansion was lit up and full of life. In the large garden, tables had been set out under fairy lights, creating a welcoming atmosphere for the family gathering. Renan circulated among the guests, chatting animatedly with the employees of his company and those of Eric. The 2 companies had now merged into a single conglomerate, combining the expertise of both brothers in a synergy that was already showing impressive results in the market. In the center of the garden, Hilda, who had chosen to keep the name she had lived by for most of her adult life, was talking to Liana and her husband, Pedro. Near them, the children, Miguel, 7, and Sofia, 5, were playing happily, unaware of the historical importance of that meeting. Sister Clara, specially invited for the occasion, watched the scene with a serene smile. Beside her was an elderly woman with white hair and a dignified posture, Julia Moller, the former nurse at the orphanage, whom Renan and Eric had managed to locate in Atibaia. Eric approached Julia, offering her a glass of champagne. "Thank you, my dear," she smiled. "I still can't believe I'm here seeing this moment." "You were essential to our story," Eric replied. "You were the one who kept the medal, the one who left your initials on the box." "It was the least I could do. When I found out about the separation, I was devastated. I couldn't stop it, but I wanted to make sure that at least a part of your story was preserved." Eric called Renan, and together the brothers raised their glasses. "A toast," Eric announced, his clear voice drawing the attention of everyone present. "To family, the one we were born into, the one that raised us and the one we choose to create. To the truth," Renan added, "which, however painful, always sets us free. And to the paths of life," Hilda added, joining her children, "which, however tortuous they may seem, eventually lead us exactly where we need to be." The glasses clinked under the starry sky of the capital, sealing not an end, but a new beginning for that family that fate had separated, and that the strength of love and the tireless search for the truth had finally reunited. Liana, who was watching the scene with emotion, approached the older brothers she had just met. "You know, I always felt like there was something my mother wasn't telling me, a secret that made her seem distant sometimes, like a part of her was always somewhere else." She smiled, her eyes, the same green eyes as her mother's, her brother's, shining with new possibilities. "Now I understand. She was with you somehow." "And we with her," replied Renan, without even knowing it. As the night wore on, Eric took a small wooden box from his pocket. Inside, the St. Christopher medal glowed softly under the garden lights. "I have something for you," he said, handing the box to Renan. "It belongs to you as much as it does to me." Renan looked at the medal, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, but it's not necessary. I already have the most important thing, my brother, back." Eric smiled. "So we will save it for the next generation, so that they never forget the importance of knowing where they came from and where they can go." The brothers looked at their nephews playing, at Liana talking to Hilda, at the friends and staff who shared this special